Hey there, and welcome to another episode of Design Under Influence. We have an awesome guest for you today. We're going to talk about entrepreneurship in the world of architecture, design, and engineering. We have a longtime client, a friend, and a very interesting individual here to talk through his journey a little bit, and maybe we all can learn something. I also have my co-host, Boris Rappaport, CEO of Arc IT, here with us. Boris, say hello to the listeners.
Hi, everybody. Good to talk to everybody again.
Hey there. So let me introduce our guest so we can dive right in. It's Randy Waldeck. Randy, how you doing?
Doing well. How are you?
Awesome. CSDA is the company you made partner in 3 years. I'm just going to jump right in because I think that's very interesting, and folks who are listening can learn a lot from some of the things that you have done in your career. But is that common to go from an employee to partner in 3 years? Doesn't sound common, is it?
I don't think it's super common. Most of the time, architects work their way up. Sometimes they'll get poached if it's the senior person. Maybe they'll be on a track. It depends on the size of the firm too, and how many people are in line, so to speak. I think the bigger the firm, the longer it takes to get there. At the time when I switched firms, I had 10 years of working experience. And then I came over to CSDA, and then I think it's about 3 years before I was officially made partner. So it's probably a little uncommon for somebody with only 10 years in the industry, but CSDA is a smaller business, so I think there's a little more flexibility. And there was a need in the firm at the time to replace some outgoing people.
So let's take 2 steps back. So we talked pre-show about your kind of path to this, and that's fascinating. I just wanted to open with this very kind of interesting point in your life where you made that partner, and then there's a lot more after that we're going to talk about. Well, let's take 2 steps back. Sort of kind of what brought you into the space? How did you enter the space? What was your specialty? And then your transition to CSDA.
Sure. So I am still a practicing acoustical engineer, and I've been doing that now for going on 21 years, which is hard to believe. I joined a firm in San Francisco right out of college. I went to Cal Poly, and there were some other graduates of my major that worked there, and it seemed interesting. Acoustics seemed much better than some of the other engineering disciplines I was looking at. So I switched into it. And so I worked at my former firm for 10 years, and then CSDA approached me. I had actually been working with CSDA as their acoustical engineer on multiple projects. And so they know who I was. Ironically, they hired a recruiter in the Midwest who found me again. And even though my office was literally across the street from theirs in downtown San Francisco. So they ended up paying a recruiter for nothing, but that's their problem.
Serendipity. Okay.
Serendipity. Yeah. So I talked with them, and, I knew what they did and who they were and all that. So that made it easier. And they needed somebody to head up their sound insulation practice for airports, which was kind of an acoustical field, if you will. So it was a noise thing. And since I knew the players and I knew the project types and all that, and they offered me a partner track, they gave me kind of a matrix and said, if you do X, Y, and Z, then by year 3, this is where you'll be. And my firm I was at, I was happy and everything was fine, but it's kind of a family-owned business, and I didn't have the right last name, and it was a very hard decision. But, I just realized for me, I study both business and engineering. So the idea of being a partner in a business appealed to me. So I switched over and, followed the track that they gave me, and, in 3 years became kind of a junior partner. And ever since then, kind of have gradually acquired more and more of ownership in the firm.
Cool. Let me ask you this. In the track itself, I'm sure there's some kind of performance metrics. But any of those performance metrics are related to actual bottom line profitability of the business, or is it top line size of the contracts you get in, or a combination? Give us a rough idea.
Yeah, it's a combination. They made a matrix, which they use for me and I think others, and we continue to use, which is usually a 3-year plan, which outlines both your compensation and then the expectations. And so there is overall revenue, for your practice. And then profitability, yeah, it's not a clear hard number, but it's a kind of a metric that they use, which all architecture firms will most use, which is called the net effective multiplier, which is kind of your profitability. And every firm has a break even, and that, depends on how many offices and how much their overhead is. And so my goal was a certain amount above our break even, essentially. So those are the two pieces: is bring enough money in the door, and then make sure that you're still profitable, because, you can bring a lot of money in, but if your staff cost is higher than the money you bring in, you're still losing money. Yeah. So they put both in there. And then there was other, kind of things, don't be a pain in the butt, be nice to people, those kind of non-numerical things that you have as far as an employee.
The squishy stuff.
Yeah. Exactly. The subjective stuff. So that was in there as well. But of course, the basic requirements are that, at the end of the day, if you're not helping the business keep the lights on, then why make you partner? So that was certainly in there. And, the numbers went up every year until year 3.
Yeah. So let me ask you, so this is kind of just to pause here for a second. This is very similar relationship that Boris and I have, where, despite being friends and thinking along the business lines and the kind of very similar line of thinking, where growth and treating people right and like client obsession over client services is kind of commonality between him and I. But, we still have the same track. Like, I'm earning partnership in the business. I'm in year 2 right now, and we have very specific performance benchmarks on both ends, top revenue, but also there's a profitability aspect to it. And so there's that's very interesting, and I understand it very well. And I think it works really well for companies to be able to bring in executive level talent, where you can't just pay them, $500K a year, or 350 or something like that. So that fractional ownership and partner track is phenomenal for everybody, I think. But well done, right? I wanted to ask you this. You said you were responsible for bringing some of the business, but you also said you had this big airport deal. Were you also hustling for new contracts on the acoustical side of things, or you were just focused on getting that airport business locked down and continue?
Yeah, I was hired originally to take over existing contracts and manage the staff that were working on them. And so I did that. And then actually at this exact same time as I was making this transition, because I think for me, at the time they made the offer to me, I remember, I think it was like a November timeframe. I didn't start at CSDA until April the following year, partly because of the holidays, partly because there's a big change in my life. I was in the process of also buying a house and had a pregnant wife. So there's a lot of 3 and then changing careers. So I took my sweet time to evaluate. And during that time, actually a big contract for the BART extension to San Jose came out for sound insulation work. So I helped pursue that actually with both my former firm and my new firm at the same time. As the acoustical sub at my former firm, and then the actual firm doing the work, which was CSDA, that was going to lead the charge. And we ended up winning that project, actually. And so I immediately jumped into that project as project manager, which was unexpected. And that tied me up for a year or 2, because that was a big project. And then once that started to settle down, then I started doing some more of my acoustical consulting that I had done at my former firm, mainly because people were coming to me and kept reaching out to me, clients I had in the past. And, so I just kind of did it on the side for fun, because it's interesting work to me. And then I made a decision, after about a year of things being calmer on the BART extension, to say, well, hey, why don't I actually try to make this a line of business? And so add it to the sound insulation work as a kind of a supplemental practice area, because it's all, as I always say, it's all noise in the end. It's just different client types and different project types.
Desired or otherwise. Okay, that's interesting. So what is the percentage of architectural projects that typically require acoustical engineering piece to it? Like overall on the grand scale?
I mean, the easier ones to say the things we don't really work on. We don't really do anything single family homes or custom homes or anything like that. Commercial projects like office space, most of the bigger ones we'll work on, not any of the small stuff. They're pretty straightforward, but bigger Google work, other unnamed tech companies, things like that. They also in a specialty spaces, they're pretty strict on what they expect for a space. So any larger 50,000 square feet plus projects in commercial we'll work on. We don't do much industrial. We do a little. And then pretty much every other project type you can think of, multifamily housing, obviously performing arts, recording studios, things like that are pretty big. And then there's a lot of environmental work, what I just call trains, planes, and automobiles, freeway noise, train vibration, things like that. So the majority of work we do, and then there's healthcare. So the majority of work we do would be commercial, healthcare, residential, and I'll call it environmental.
Gotcha. And so what this adventure is leading you towards is a new beginning, right? So it's not yet public information, but we decided that we can talk about it a little bit, Randy. So why don't you tell us what you're doing here?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess it's been 6 or 7 years where CSDA started doing traditional acoustical consulting, what architects view as traditional acoustical consulting, in addition to the airport work, which doesn't really involve other architects. And so, I don't know, a year or so ago, we've grown the business from really just me doing it on the side to now I think I'm up to about 8 people just doing pure acoustical consulting. So for a couple of reasons, the firm's name is CSDA Design Group, and it's unclear what does that mean? Are we architects? Are we engineers? And since we have 2 divisions, it was confusing to people. And so I wanted a name and something that was a little more, if you will, on brand, and that there wasn't confusion, because CSDA has been around for something like 70 years now. So a lot of people just look at them as school architects, which is a division of the company that's been there forever. So we're launching, if I can get all my stuff done in the next couple months, new name, new brand, new website. Obviously, my staff will just kind of transition over, and then we're going to have the fun job of existing contracts with CSDA, and then all the new contracts we're going to push over to what we're calling resonance acoustics.
All right, cool. Resonance acoustics. Nice. Yeah.
So it's, it'll be the same gang of folks and all that. It's really a spin-off and I don't want to say branding thing because it's a, completely separate entity, but I think that will help clarify what we do. The name, speaks to acoustics a little bit more than CSDA. And, other than the initial difficulties of launching any business, and especially with existing clients and getting the word out and explaining it to a lot of clients, it should be fun.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, if you think, for people out there, not you, Randy, people out there who are listening, if you think launching a business with existing clients is hard, try launching it without. That's impossible. So, that's congratulations, man. That's really awesome. That's kind of either you buy into the existing business via partnership or just buy a business, or you take opportunity and a line of business from an existing entity, split off and run your own. So those are extremely viable. Boris decided to start the business from nothing, which not to say, no, not from nothing, because he had accumulated lots of relationship and work in this space for many, many years with architects. But still, you maybe start what, Boris? You started 1 or 2 clients?
Yeah. That's how we started. And I think CSDA was like our number 3 client.
We were your 3rd.
Yes.
Yeah. And thank you for that. Thank you for your business. Very appreciative of that. But I want to shift gears just a little bit and finish off on some of the systems. So I'd like our shows, Randy, to give some tactical advice that maybe people don't watch all the way, maybe not even here anymore, but the article would sort of have some bullet points and some takeaways for folks. So Let's talk about systems. Now, your journey has been, like, it sounds very interesting, but there was a lot of hard work, right? There was a lot of actual in the trenches decisions you had to make, system you had to implement, people you had to let go. What's some of the things that stand out? Some of the things you had to overcome that you think will be helpful for other people?
Well, I think there's for the acoustical consulting practice, there's a lot of software and tools that are either custom or kind of hard to get your hands on. Unlike architecture, where, you just pay 25% of your profit to Autodesk every year, and you're in business. The acoustical stuff is, to get your tools and techniques and your tricks and your software and all your stuff set up is tough. And, the established acoustical consulting companies have spent lots of time and money creating software, writing software, customizing software to do the work that needs to be done because it's such a specialty. There's not a Revit out there for acoustical consultants. There's a variety of tools, and some of them are good and some of them are 10 years old. And so that's a difficulty to get these things built and integrated. And then you have a bunch of engineers, and all engineers disagree with each other and think their way's better. So I'm dealing with a bunch of engineers who all think their stuff is better than the other person's. So I think there's a lot there that maybe architects don't have to deal with. But on a related note, we still have to be able, we work with architects, so we have to be able to use Revit, and we have to be able to deal with their models and all that. So I have to have people that are good enough with Revit to be able to, get work product from architects, open it up, do what we need to do, send things back in Revit if we need to. And that's not, our engineers do not study Revit and do not learn Revit. So one of the fortunate things at CSDA is the fact that we have architects on staff. And so they've fulfilled that need for us. In my former firm, we didn't have anybody we had one person who would study AutoCAD at the time, but that has actually been a benefit to us, is we already had the Revit and the knowledge in-house. So I didn't have to worry about that. I had to worry about all the engineering stuff. And then besides that, just like any architecture engineering firm, there's all the software, file storage. Where do we store files? Do we go to the cloud? And there's still a debate about that. We still have to deal with really large Revit files. We have to deal with a bunch of audio files, which are really large. And, right now we're still on local file storage, but, we're talking about going to the cloud. And it's just a question of what makes the most sense. And there's good and bad to both. So I think it's an ongoing struggle for all firms, and there's money associated with all of that. I mean, the work, I always say, it's just kind of like architecture and engineering is the same way. The work is all done the same way, right? Like the math is the math. Design has there's a certain template for how you produce drawings and details and specs. Like those are all standard no matter what firm you are. So the question though is how do you do the work the most efficiently, frankly? And, because again, in acoustics, the math formulas are the math formulas. You can't change those, but how can you look at a bunch of data and churn it out into what we need to give architects? And I mean, architecture is kind of the same way. As you need to design a building, you need a set of details and specs and floor plans and RCPs and all this jazz. But how can you do it in a way that's efficient, especially with all the software that's out there? Because fees are always, I kind of laugh, like my fees haven't changed that much over the years because everyone just expects us to be more efficient. And to some degree we are, but you have to constantly think about how can I do this faster and better than I did 5 years ago? Because while you can increase your fees somewhat, it's ironic that the fees haven't changed to keep up, frankly, with inflation, because
which is strange, right? And because the salaries went up over 5 years for sure. Inflation is, well, not even counting last couple of years. Just talking even normal inflation would eat into this. So that's kind of strange that you are unable to control your rate to stay competitive. That's is rate a big deal?
Well, they've gone up, but I don't think it's anywhere near the rate of inflation, because the expectation is you can just be more productive, and which is true. I mean, there are tools and software that lets us be more productive. I mean, it's God, I'm going to age myself, but when I started doing acoustics, we would go into a building and we'd record whatever we're recording, whether it's the sound of a highway outside, and we'd have to go back to the lab and play the tape back into an analyzer and get the numbers. And now, the gear gives you the numbers instantaneously, of course. So, the reality is that what used to be, 4 hours of work is an hour and a half because of the tools we have. So I think, of course the fees have gone up, but I think if we actually tracked it versus inflation, I don't think it'd be anywhere near what inflation and wages have been. And so, the reason I say all that is there's always this pressure. And I think architects have a bigger pressure on fees. It's a very competitive marketplace. They have a harder job, frankly, because they not only have to design, they have to manage all the subs and do all the project management. And so seeing that side of CSDA and all that they have to deal with gives me newfound respect for all my other architecture clients. Mm. But it's a lot. And so design is, it's what all the architects love to do. But frankly, successful architects and successful firms, it's more about the management of the projects and being able to be efficient, without compromising quality. Because, in any design business, if you make mistakes in design, it snowballs into very expensive mistakes in construction, which either costs you a lot of money, puts you out of business, or just gives you an ulcer.
Yeah, or all of the above. Let me make some play by you. This has been a practice of mine, and I have experienced outcomes, but I want to get your opinion. So we talked about the fee pressure, and this is interesting. I love these conversations, how things twist and turn. But the fee pressure, profitability pressure is very interesting. And the way I think the future of solution is specialization, like deep specialization. For example, ArchIT does not work outside of architecture, design, engineering community. Sure, if you recommend someone, we'll talk to them. We have some clients who are not, but we're built around your tech stack, right? The tech stack, not acoustical, but tech stack for your typical architecture firm. We understand that our efficiencies are significantly better than a firm who has only one or two architecture clients and then they help everybody. So that's one piece. The second piece is a fee pressure, because we are able to solve problems to with such a track record and so many recommendations and in industry connections. We rarely lose a head-to-head, bid. So I'm just curious what your experience with specialization. Does CSDA specialize in certain type of architecture, or you kind of take it all, or what's the deal? How do you guys work?
CSDA, the architecture side, does mostly school design, mostly K through 12, although some higher ed as well. And occasionally we'll do some like community center-y type of projects, things like that. But we don't do residential, we don't do commercial, and it's pretty much education facilities.
So it's specialized.
It is specialized, but the good and bad with that is there is some specialty knowledge when you do school work. There's a state agency, DSA, that has to approve drawings, and they, like any state agency, you have to know what they want and don't want. And if you don't know and it's your first time, you're gonna get rejected, and it costs you a bunch of money to pick it up, and schedule delays because they take forever to review things and approve things. So there's that specialty. That's kind of the first gatekeeper, but lots of firms have that experience. And the thing is, for example, with public schools, there's a guideline, I think it's put out by the state, of like what your fee should be based upon the construction costs. And so, I think it's OPFC, or I think that's what it's called. And I forgot the agency that is. And so they all kind of follow that, which is, it's Office of Public Facilities Construction is going to be my guess. And they say, if it's less than 50 million, this is a percentage of the design fee. And that includes architecture and all the subs. And so that's an example. And higher ed has similar, they kind of know what to expect to pay. Or a lot of higher ed's also design build. So you're, as an architect or designer, you're working kind of for the contractor. Yes, it's a partnership, but the contractor is kind of the prime. And so, of course, and the push, and to win it, you have to kind of be the quote unquote best value, which means they like your design and they like the team, but they really like the price, more important. So there's a lot of pressure in general on that design build. And then, K through 12, the number is a number, right? It's a $60 million construction value. Therefore, the design fee will be this. And you don't have a lot
ceiling.
You don't really have a lot of like, well, I need more, because they're probably just going to go to the next person. Because again, with public bids too, and public agencies, they kind of have to, follow a set of rules. So they can't be seen as being favoritism or anything like that. So there's all those pressures then to deliver a project, and that percentage may or may not be realistic. The construction budget may or may not be realistic, especially with construction costs. So that's why, yes, especially with public work in general, it's qualifications and often price based. So you could be really good and have a great name, and that'll probably get you to the short list, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to win the work, or you may get the work and not be able to actually make any money on it.
That was my next question. Like, do they leave? Do you typically find enough room to make some money? Because business is not viable without profit. Let's just say it's not about greed. It's about survival. This is about, about living versus living in misery. So profit is a must for a business. But so you say well, obviously you guys in business and successful. So there's a little bit of room there for you if you don't screw things up.
Yeah. I mean, in general, yeah, I think, it's like anything. Most projects you do okay on, some you make a little extra money, some you lose a little. That's just the reality, whether it's an acoustical project or an architecture project. You're not going to make wild profits on all of them. I mean, I think AIA probably tracks this better than me, but I'm sure they track profit percentage for architecture firms. They track all the other numbers. And I'd say architecture firms generally, with some exceptions, you're if you do 10% profit a year, you're winning. It's not a business that's got huge margins. There's just competition. And like I said, for the public work, it's the public dollars. So they're very cognizant, that they don't want their architecture teams flying around in private jets. It's not a good look with taxpayer money. So, for all those reasons, but, there's big name firms out there that have been very profitable over the years, and some of them do more private sector work or have a very, like you said, a very big specialty, or they're just a big name, and the margins may be better. It's hard. I don't have access, but I'd say firms our size, small to medium sized firms, it's certainly tougher. Architecture is a tough business.
And you know what? I don't disagree, but I don't know if there's an easy business out there. I've tried a lot of them. Yeah,
true.
I think IT is a really good business, but we have our own challenges. Like, it's very difficult to earn a client. Like, how often do you change your IT providers? I mean, they really have to screw you up, or they have to go out of business for a firm to change IT providers. When you're happy with your IT, and that's a great situation. But just people don't think about this anyway. So we have our own set of challenges. I think there's a little bit more opportunity for profitability, but if you invest in good people and growth, there isn't much. It's not the high margin business. But in any event, I think this was fantastic. We talked about all kinds of interesting stuff. So, any parting advice for someone who is maybe running 2 or 3 or 5 or 7 person firm, was looking to grow, was looking to do something interesting, and anything you've learned recently or overall that you advise them to do?
Sure. I mean, I think if it's architects, because I know you guys speak to a lot of them, what I've found kind of invaluable is if it's a small firm and you're the only person running it, then it's you're either good at doing all the things, whether that's accounting or, you know what I mean? Like, you have to understand the numbers and the practice and the creativity side and all of that, and the client side. But I think for architects, what I've seen and what I would recommend is you have one person in leadership that actually understands numbers. And I'm not saying architects don't understand numbers, but, by default, architects are creative people, and creative right-brained folks, numbers and finances and stuff isn't interesting to them. And I don't blame them. But it's critical for a business for you to be kind of laser focused on the numbers. Not to the, you have to be not to the detriment of the creative side and putting out good product and making clients happy and all that other stuff. You have to do that no matter what. It doesn't matter what type of business you are. But I think where I've seen, and I have a lot of friends who are partners and things in architecture firms, is the ones that make it for the long haul, have somebody in there that is laser focused on making sure the business is viable. And not just about, our design is the best, because, I hate to say it, the reality is good design is great and most clients appreciate it. But a lot of projects, we need this building, and they already kind of know what they want, and they don't have budget for anything more than just kind of a standard thing. And so you got to make that work. Not every project is what we call a postcard project, where you're going to send it a pretty picture out. And so I think for architecture firms, that's what I would, seriously have, whether they're a partner or they're a business consultant or somebody that makes sure that you're viable, because it can go south on you pretty quick. And digging out of a financial hole in a business is incredibly difficult when the margins are what they are in the business. So I think that would be my suggestion for architecture folks. Engineers, same suggestion, but since they live and breathe numbers, it's a little more innate to them. And I think engineers, and I'll put acoustical people, would be always understanding that your client is an architect. And so your work product should speak more graphically than engineers are used to. I think that would be the engineering side. And I'm kind of helping my competitors.
All right, so put a pretty face on your project, to be able to sell it. And then, hey, know your numbers, make sure the business is viable. Sage advice sounds very simple, very difficult to do because your right brain, the left brain, you're design focused. It's very difficult to have numbers. Then have somebody partner with somebody or learn it yourself. Yeah, I had to, suffer through accounting classes in school. I don't know. You took business. You remember there was accounting 1, accounting 2. I mean, there's just finance.
Debits and credits. Yes, I remember.
Dude, it gets crazy. But anyway, knowing this will make you a higher chance of success. Randy, appreciate your time very much. I know you're busy. Wish you amazing luck in your venture. If we can help in any way, we'll spread the message once you guys are out, publicly. And good luck to Resonance Acoustics. Is that
Yep.
Resonance?
Yep, you got it.
Not residence, resonance.
Resonance, yes. Yeah,
Resonance.
Yes.
All right. Yeah. And Randy, again, thank you, and all the best to you in your ventures.
Thank you. Appreciate it. You guys take care.
Thanks, Randy.